How is it going, everybody? Today we are going to be taking a look at the Bristlenose Pleco. Specifically, I have some long fin Bristlenose Plecos in here. This is going to be a care guide as well as a kind of a how to breed guide. Because if you look here, we have a male that is fanning the front of a cave, which is a pretty good indicator that there's some eggs there. So if we shine a flashlight in there, I don't want to spook them, but you can see those eggs back there. So he is fanning and guarding those eggs. Those eggs were actually laid about 3 days ago now, so they should be hatching here in the next couple days. Bristlenose Pleco eggs hatch anywhere between 3 to about 7 days or so, and then they become little wrigglers inside the cave. And they'll have these giant yolk sacs on them, the little wrigglers, and they will feed off those yolk sacs for probably about up to 5 days before they eventually leave the cave and swim about the aquarium. And then the dad here can actually get some free time, leave the front of the cave and go get some food to eat, because that's his entire job for about a week or two, is just to sit in front of the cave and fan. He won't go to the bathroom in front of the cave or in the cave. He'll actually leave to make sure the babies are, as clean of an environment as possible. And the reason he fans like that is so that way he can keep the fungus off the eggs and he can keep the eggs oxygenated and keep them moving around a little bit inside that little cave. So let's go ahead and get into some of what makes the Bristlenose Pleco breed. So first off, like with anything, you want to make sure you have at least one male and one female together. Obviously, they're not going to breed unless you have both genders. If you have an odd number of plecos, like if you have 3 or 4, you always want to make sure you have more females than males, because males will be quite competitive and may even start to fight each other a little bit if there are multiple males and not enough females to suffice them all. Typically, you can go for a 1-to-1 pair, 1 male to 1 female, or you can have 2 to 3 females with 1 male at a time. So if the females are on a different cycle, then one female can lay eggs 1 week, the male will take care of those eggs for 2 weeks, and then the next female will lay eggs on week 3 or what have you. In this case, I have 2 females in this tank with my 1 longfin Bristlenose Pleco here, and I think both females actually laid eggs at the exact same time, because it appears as if there's 2 different clutches of eggs up in there. Let me see if I can shine a light in there again and you can kind of see the 2 different clutches. There we go. So you can see how there's 1 clutch in the back and then a clutch kind of in the front there. So we got 2 different clutches going on. So yeah, typically always have more females than you do males. Another thing you want to have is you want to make sure you have caves. Bristlenose Plecos are cave breeders, so this could be a little coconut cave right here, or it could be a log cave. I have 3 log caves and 1 coconut cave in this tank, but there's only 1 male. So the reason why you want to have multiple caves available in the tank is the male is going to go around and find out which cave is best for him. They want options. So as soon as they designate a cave that they want to breed in, they'll take some time and they'll clean that cave out. You'll see them wiggling around in the cave, pushing any debris, any sand out of the cave, and start prepping it for a female. Now, Bristlenose Plecos are more herbivores than they are omnivores, so they typically like a diet more vegetation-wise than protein-based diet. So as you can see here, I have some zucchinis on a skewer, so that way the zucchinis can sink. They'll take just about any kind of vegetable. They'll take broccoli florets. They love zucchinis. They love green beans straight out of the can. Get the no salt added ones from Walmart, 50 cents, easy peasy. Just plop a couple beans in there once in a while. They'll chew those things up. They'll also do cucumber, things like that. But if any of your vegetation starts to float up to the top, you can either blanch it in boiling water, cook it in boiling water for a couple minutes, and then throw it straight into ice water. That'll make it a little heavier, so that way your blanched vegetables will sink to the bottom. Or you can take the lazy method and you can either put it on a fork or a skewer, so that way it sinks to the bottom, and it'll be readily accessible for your plecos, any snails that are in the tank. They will just chew those things up. Now, I'm not going to get into the nitrogen cycle or tell you the parameters of your tank. You should already know you don't want any ammonia, you don't want any nitrites, you want very little nitrates in your tank. Another big thing for plecos, though, in addition to all your parameters, is you want some driftwood. And this can either be your local driftwood at the store, it could be spider wood. Not all types of wood are good for aquariums, so make sure you do your research and figure out which woods are good for your aquarium. If you buy it from a wholesaler, any brand name pet store, any local pet store, they're not going to sell you any wood that is not going to be good for your aquarium. So you can buy wood from them. That's where I get all of my wood. And the plecos, in the absence of any food and just occasionally, they'll actually chew on the wood. I don't know if you can see my female right there with the glare, but I have 2 females that are actually on the wood right now, munching on it. They do get some minerals, some vitamins from the wood, so it's a really good source of nutrients for the plecos to have any source of wood in your aquarium. So if you want happy plecos, make sure you add a little bit of wood in there. My next tip is make sure you have some good filtration. So I have 2 big sponge filters in this aquarium, 1 in each corner. This not only filters my aquarium for very, very cheap, but it also oxygenates the surface. So all the bubbles from the sponge filter agitate the surface of the water, which allow oxygen to come into the water. Obviously, you want to keep your water clean. This tank is a little filthy because I've had this zucchini in here for about 2 days and I haven't done a water change. I don't want to disturb the male too much because I want him to hatch these eggs naturally. I don't want him to give up and kick the eggs out or get scared and kick the eggs out or abandon them and I lose all the fry, because I probably have about 100 eggs in there. In addition to the water, though, I have an Indian almond leaf in the back. So every probably 3 to 4 weeks or so, I'll add about half of an Indian almond leaf. The water in my area is kind of hard, so I typically add some water softeners, but I go with a more natural water softener, such as the Indian almond leaf. You can use a couple different types of leaves, but I found that Indian almond leaves work the best, and they're easiest, they're cheapest, and always in stock. In addition to the zucchinis and any vegetation you can find, I don't only give them vegetation, I also give them a variety of different foods, and this is critical to them having a spawn, is you want to give them a varied diet. So not only vegetables, but you want to give them things like little pellets for bottom wafers. It's really good for them. You can add a couple flakes here and there. As long as they float to the bottom, they'll eat them. They are algae eaters, and you'll see them occasionally as cleaning fish, but they aren't necessarily cleaning fish. They'll clean the surface of your glass and a couple decorations around your tank of algae, sure, but their diet is not solely algae. They need some other stuff as well. So you can give them algae wafers, however, they are just going to eat the algae across the tank, but if there's not really a lot of algae in your tank, you do want to give them a little bit of algae, so plop an algae wafer in once in a while. And then their biggest source of protein that I give my plecos is bloodworms. So every couple days, maybe once or twice a week, I will drop a cube of little tiny bloodworms in the tank, and they'll just eat them right off the bottom, and that's their source of protein. For vegetation and all their other foods versus their protein, I probably do about 70% vegetation and pellets and flakes, and then 30% protein foods such as the bloodworms, things like that. And this is a critical part of having a successful spawn, is all this varied diet. You can't just eat the same thing. The plecos can't just eat the same thing all day, every single day. That's like going to McDonald's and eating a cheeseburger 3 times a day, every single day. They're gonna get pretty sick of it, so you wanna give them a variety of foods. And the last tip that I have for you, which is probably the biggest tip, but the reason why I save it for last is it's the last thing you wanna do. So, after you've met all the other triggers, you've been feeding them correctly, your water's good, you have your wood, you have your caves, you have your males and females, and you know that they're ready to breed, they'll maybe start acting a little funny in your tank, they might start dancing around each other, but you just can't get any eggs. Typically what I do before I go to bed is the night before I want them to breed, or at least I want to try to get them to breed, and I'll try this maybe once every 4 to 5 days or so, is you take your tank, I have them currently in a 40-gallon breeder, I'll do about a 50% water change, and I typically keep this tank at about 75, 76 degrees. With that 50% water change, I'll fill it back up with colder water, around 71, 72 degrees. So that way that 71, 72 degrees water mixed with the 76, it's going to overall drop that temperature by about 3 to 4 degrees. You don't want to completely shock them, so you don't want to do more than 3 to 4 degrees. But by dropping the water temperature of the tank, you're convincing the plecos that it's the rainy season in the Amazon. So in the wild, they like to breed not only in the caves, but also during the rainy season. So by dropping the temperature, you're mimicking the effects of the rainy season. So they're going to think that it's raining, and they're going to be like, oh boy, and they're going to go in those caves, and they might make some magic happen, and you might wake up in the next morning, and you might have some pleco eggs like we did. So again, 50% water change. Typically I do about when I'm filling up the tank, it's about 5 to 6 degrees cooler. So that way when it mixes with the water that's already in there, it settles at like 3 to 4 degrees cooler than it was originally. And the heater in the back, it's gonna heat the water back up. But it's just that couple hours of having that colder temperature will influence the plecos to breed. All right, I don't know if you can see it quite well, but I do have another pleco. This is my short fin male. He is guarding a bunch of eggs, and I do have a ton of these snails. Unfortunately, I dropped a zucchini right in front of his cave, so there's just this plethora of snails right in front of his cave. So he is defending those eggs. Every time a snail even remotely gets close, he'll tail smack the snail and tell it to get away. And he has been in that cave, and he has been absolutely protecting those eggs, which is great. I want the males to have a natural spawn. A lot of people will take the eggs out and hatch them themselves, but I want to give both my short fin male here and my long fin male in the other cave a chance to hatch these eggs naturally. If they don't do it, they'll typically just kick the eggs out to the front of the cave. In this tank, since I have so many snails right here, I have to be on that in order to save the eggs myself if that ever happens. But since we're on day 3 or day 4 of these eggs and the male is still in there, I have pretty high hopes that he's gonna take them all the way to hatching. All right, so that is going to be it for my little couple tips and tricks in order to help spawn your bristlenose plecos. Short fins, long fins, they're the same exact thing, same exact process, just a different species of pleco. Well, I should say same species, different variant, but same exact thing on how to breed them. So if you got long fins, you got short fins, this video should help you if you're having trouble with spawning. But yeah, those are my tips and tricks, and I've had success with it so far. Can't wait to raise these eggs up and make a couple videos on how to raise bristlenose pleco fry. Peace.